Mystery Babylon, fallen angel incursion, men becoming giants, secret societies, the AntiChrist reemergence. Hey, did you load the wrong backdrop? Nope. Wrong music? Nope. Take the journey and discover secret patterns hidden in your face your whole life. Super advanced ancient technology that they told you was just a tower. The story of all ages. It all starts and ends at the Tower of Babel. You really think God was tripping about a cigarette? You really think he was sweating a regular old building tower? The Tower of Babel was way more like this than like this. Think about how these are called towers. Now think of a 10G, 20G, 1000G, million G, mile-and-a-half high tower in the sky, possibly connected to the entire pyramid grid on planet Earth, able to split dimensions possibly, and even enter God's dimension. That's right, my theory on this was that this tower could disable the entire firmament, just completely obliterate the dome. Which, if you see what Nimrod's plan was, that's exactly what it was. It was to march right into God's presence and challenge him to his face for flooding the world, and taking out his Nephilim ancestor bloodline. If you do some etymology and original language word study, you realize when it says that they wanted to make a name for themselves, that particular phrase in Genesis regarding the Tower of Babel actually can mean the word renown, which means nothing to you unless you know earlier in Genesis when it talks about the product of the fallen angels and women, they were known as the men of renown. They were giants, the men who did great feats on the earth, the men of renown. So they were saying that we want to become renowned too. And if you study Nimrod's story, you realize that he became a giant. The word is Gaborim. The original text says Nimrod became a Gaborim. There's a whole fascinating study there about Nimrod learned to manipulate genetics, and he actually did whatever ritual or process that involved becoming a giant or one of these Nephilim beings. What if this million G-like dimensional splitting tower was the key to all the pyramids and the ley lines and the entire worldwide energy harvesting grid? That's just a side theory. The main theory is that this tower was absolutely to disable the dome firmament. This is all for entertainment, by the way, because, well, you know, maybe this is why some people think NASA keeps sending rocket-like missile things to try to blow up the dome. Same reason as Nimrod. Also, two quick side notes. You'll find an interesting word study in the word Shem and pyramid, all relating to tower in the Tower of Babel. Also, in reference to the pyramids, the way they all line to Orion, and were possibly all connected in this worldwide grid, maybe connecting to the tower. But anyway, you'll find how the pyramids line to Orion, and an interesting thread about how Orion could be the actual physical location of heaven. There's one there. And maybe that's why all the pyramids were aligned that way, having to do with disabling the firmament and breaking into heaven. Total ascension to the next dimension, which seems to be kind of what all the religions were about. Which the book of Jasher kind of goes into that, and says that there were three distinct camps of people at the tower who God gave all their own judgments to. One, like Nimrod's camp, who wanted to march right into heaven and just fight him face to face. One who wanted to shoot arrows into heaven from earth once the dome was disabled. And one who just wanted free access to worship their gods face to face once the firmament was gone. The three distinct punishments were the arrow shooters were instantly taken out. The ones who wanted to worship their gods were changed into monkey and elephant-like beings, according to the book of Jasher, which has a really interesting connection to the origin of Hindu gods. And even how the Hindu gods, who are elephants and monkeys, worship other gods. Just like this Tower of Babel scenario. And the final camp, Nimrod's camp, who I guess were somewhat respectable for at least wanting to challenge him face to face rather than shooting arrows, it says that God spread them all over the world. If you really think about it, it seems like the world, which was one landmass, and it says one language at the time, that at this exact event when God sent the warrior wind spirits down to just destroy it all, that this is when all the land masses were separated, and people were spread all over the world, and their languages were confused, and the origin of languages, and possibly even why we look different. So the very much spiritual, technological Stargate portal of Babel is a much more better understanding in my opinion. One thing the Tower of Babel definitely was not was this tower right here. Let's hit one thought experiment in conclusion. The phrase that God is holding us back from knowledge, holding us back from achieving things like he did at the Tower of Babel and the Garden of Eden. Well, let's look at it. Maybe both times there was a good reason, and it was both tied to other entities and giants trying to completely take over this realm, and the resets were the only way we could survive. What if we're on the verge of another incursion right now? By the way, the same people I hear talk about this say that it's the tree of knowledge, and God's holding us back from knowledge. Again, it's not the tree of knowledge. It's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We weren't meant to know that kind of good and evil in that state that we were in. The same way we weren't meant to partake in the tree of life in the state we were in either. All according to the actual context of these ancient texts. So this same omission and twisting, ironically, was the same strategy the serpent used in the tree to deceive us in the first place. And it still works now on a lot of people. Think about it. According to the texts, When we were created, literally our only commands were to eat fruit and enjoy the pleasure of multiplying. In paradise. Sounds pretty good to me. Speaking of Eden, the garden was just a garden inside of Eden. Eden was whatever was outside of the garden as well. Was Eden walled? Was it on top of a mountain? Was it in what we consider the North Pole now? Anyway, it seems like God did want us to partake in the tree of life, and he did want the people as one, just under the right conditions. Maybe faith is the ultimate experiment after all. Keep thinking, but don't let those brains overheat. Yeah, Nimrod knew trigonometry. He was definitely plotting out Portal Stargate, firmament disabling tech that also doubled as the new capital for heaven and earth. Check it out. You saw part 1, this thought experiment's about to go way deeper. We're gonna dig up some evidence. Babel, etymology, Nimrod, Orion, when will the firmament disable, did God lie, and so much other stuff. All for entertainment, theories, and thinking. Let's turn on the Bunsen burners. Babel etymology, by the way, means gate of the gods or gateway of the gods, back into the Stargate concept. Migdal Babel is the original Hebrew term for this. Babel comes from the Hebrew word balal, meaning to confuse or mingle, for 2 of the definitions. This word balal ties into the god Baal/Belial, the same deity. The word Migdal can mean temple or elevated platform, or raised bed. So let's just break down some thought forms. The elevated platform of Baal, the raised bed of confusion or mixing/mingling, which sounds a lot like Genesis 6:4, genetic or sexual mixing, and that word mingle is interesting if you know the prophet Daniel, and how he talks about a non-human seed will mingle with the seed of man. Either way, this giant altar to Baal definitely has some sacrifice ritual vibes. Baal, by the way, is another identity for Satan, if you didn't know. Let's tie in CERN right here, the particle accelerator. Smashing atoms believed to be able to break through to another dimension, or even be the Revelation 9 bottomless pit where the beings come from. But CERN also was built on an ancient temple to gods, just like the Tower of Babel. It even has statues out front of the gods. Shiva's one of them. There's even footage of them doing rituals out there, which they said was a joke. Cool story, bro. So originally, the world was one language, but after the tower, when the languages were split, it seems like pictogram forms were the first types of languages because nobody could understand each other. And then eventually, language started to develop. Sumerian, one of the first languages, called this place Enigmatic. Immediately, you can look at some of the root cores that make up the word and see Enki or Anunnaki root core sounds. So in Sumerian, what it says, it's a temple of the foundation of heaven and earth. And this wasn't a foundation to hold up the sky. They weren't stupid. The sky was already held up. Foundation meaning the capital. This was meant to be the capital of heaven and earth, dedicated to Baal, which is why all the ancient religions worship Nimrod and Nimrod's god. Check out this picture. The reason Nimrod was known as many names of many languages is because that's when all the languages were changed and they all remember that story. So obviously, he would be called lots of different things in lots of different languages. And this is the mystery Babylon religion, repackaged, remixed, and telephone game down the line of history. So this one world in unity, one world religion, under one ruler, worshiping one god with one language, is what you're going to see repackaged its way back around at the end with the AntiChrist storyline. Just straight up capital for the New World Order style repackaged. Full circle. This will be a good time to show you how Nimrod and his team were on that astrophysicist level with trigonometry. Which, by the way, if you watched this 3 days ago, Google would have told you a different story, since that's what you want to believe anyway. Well, most. A couple of days ago, if you were to Google when the oldest example of trigonometry was, it would be Hipparchus, Greek astronomer. But if you Google it today, you'll find a completely different answer, because at the time of the Tower of Babel, they found tablets that show a more advanced form of trigonometry than we have today, which has great relevance for our modern world. The article quoted as saying, the ancient world teaching us something new. Hey, wouldn't you say? Because yeah, while he was planning out trigonometry, he was also just shooting a plain bow and arrow straight up into the sky and thought he killed God because it came down with blood. That's exactly how to interpret that. So what is trigonometry used for anyway? Is that what astrophysicists use? Is that what is being used at CERN? Full circle again. Thought forms expanding. Nimrod, the mighty hunter. Orion, the mighty hunter. Again, this connection with Nimrod and Orion and the pyramids with the way that they're aligned. Also, Orion is called Al-Jabor by Syrians, which is the same as El Gabor, which we went over in the first video, the giant. And Nimrod became a Gaborim. This also ties in with the idea that Nimrod wanted to take out God in heaven, which the whole location of heaven being an Orion thread, tying back in. In Syrian, Tammuz is Nimrod, and in some languages, Tammuz is what they call Orion. A lot of the ancient religions started by worshiping Nimrod, all by different names, with different languages trying to make language. This was all ancient fertility god worship, birthing Baal. Also on a side note, this seems like this is where nations began. And the nations were divided up amongst spirit beings known as the Divine Council. This thread is referenced in the Bible, in the Psalms and other places. Also, Michael Heiser has some really good information on it you can go look up and be educated. So it's because of all this and his failure that the name Nimrod became synonymous with making foolish decisions, and you call somebody a Nimrod. Well, although extremely wise, morally challenging God maybe was not the best experiment for Nimrod to conduct. Also, if you didn't know, the book of Jasher says that Nimrod was killed by Esau. Moving into our final experiment, did God lie? Did God lie, or did the serpent lie? What did they say? What happened after? God said, don't eat from it or you'll die. The serpent said, you can eat from it and you'll be like God. Did they die? The answer is yes. Did they become like God? The answer is no. Still don't believe me? It's because you're not asking the most obvious question that nobody asked. Why didn't they eat from the tree of life? There was no command against eating from the tree of life. It was also in the garden. They were free to eat from the tree of life in a pure and innocent state and live forever that way. That would have made them like God. That was the tree that would have made them like God. They were on their way to that tree to eat eventually from it, and they were intercepted by the serpent, who convinced them to eat from the wrong tree. The same thing he's doing to many of you right now. He convinced them to eat from the wrong tree. That would sabotage all of us and take the long route to becoming like God. We would have been like God if we would have eaten from the tree of life, which was God's original intentions all along, according to the context of the text. But don't worry, God will work his way back around to the tree for us, because after all, he made it for us. Everyone is obviously free to think what they want. These are just interesting data points for you on your journey, as we all head towards the final Tower of Babel scenario. Don't be afraid to tread the unknown when you do your own experiments. Keep seeking truth at all costs. Till I see you next time.
Find out. Attacks on my health, wealth, and freedom. Betrayed by those closest, I guess I don't need them. List goes on, every day was just a beating. Long story short, it wasn't easy, but I beat them. Life wasn't eating, had to find a way to make it back. Out of control and balance, wish I could take it back. I reminisce, for life was complicated. It went from Wu-Tang simple to getting Compton faded. Do it all again, where do I begin?
Hopefully you don't end up at this tree of life, which is alchemy. Alchemy, no matter what they tell you, is basically trying to recapture what was lost at Eden. What was granted to Adam, but taken from him before they were kicked out of the garden. This is man's attempt, guided by fallen angels, to reclaim that. There's this whole metaphor of going through the fire and becoming gold, which is a metaphor. It's not the grand work or the magnum opus, and a lot of the things that they said alchemists could do, they could. But it went way deeper than that. And everything today, from all the secret societies, they are all basically one just remix, trying to do the grand work, trying to achieve alchemy, trying to do man's attempt to regain the tree of life. That's why you see this tree of life here in Sumer. That's why you see the pattern of the tree of life everywhere else in all cultures, and you still see it in traditions like Kabbalistic ones and other secret societies. It is Mystery Babylon. And all the religions are one religion. They're all just remixed of one religion, the Mystery Babylon religion, which is referenced in Revelation. All religions except for one, which ironically isn't really a religion. Jesus, Yeshua, came to dispose of religion and restore the bridge, the relationship between God and man. The Theory of Everything playlist will explain this in detail and even show you how fallen angels started countries and religions, and you can even trace which countries fallen angels went to. That's going to be my next big Docu-Comp. 9 episodes in the correct order you should watch them in. Side quest. Let's do a quick examination of the Anunnaki tech pack that we always see. Obviously, we see the wristbands and the handbags, which, like I've said before, remind me of They Live. Think about how they used the watches like smartwatches back in the They Live movie. Also, Zuck is working on wristbands that can read your mind. Think of the interface between the brain, frequency, your blood, your DNA. It's all there. All the secrets to the Anunnaki tech pack and the tree of life. The handbags were used for genetics, alteration, and frequency, which is what the tree of life is. Also, you'll see things like necklaces and star markings. This all ties into the stars, like I've been telling you. Frequency and ancient technology. From the Anunnaki, who are the fallen angels, who went into hiding and ruled from human proxy leadership. Fast forward through the elite mystery secret society schools and the top companies like BlackRock, and even letter agencies who get this technology, then disseminate it to places like Apple, Facebook, and Google, like I've told you. Also things like Google Glass, which can read your mind. This is from 10 years ago. Just like the Smart Dust was. The Smart Dust nanotech that's wash resistant on clothing, you can't even see it with your eyes, was mainstream at least 10 years ago. Speaking of Babel and frequency tech, check out this old world cathedral and how it looks identical to this circuitry. It's all about frequency. And shape power, which I've told you about in the tetrahedron Star of David. Elohim hiding knowledge in one symbol video. The shape makes electricity and frequency flow in certain ways. And this is all again tied to the stars and invisible things we don't know about. And even though it was way less than Babel, even these old gates from Babylon they're discovering had lots of properties like magnetic ones that they didn't know about. So again, all secret societies being the same, all religions being the same, but one, which we'll be coming back to in Theory of Everything. For now, let's start diving into some of these patterns that we see and how this tree of life has made its way all the way till now. And this world will be circling again to the future Tower of Babel, CERN, future deep dive. But for now, the main pattern you need to know going into the second half where we'll complete this is Babel, the Tower of Babel, Nimrod. Every culture copied the Tower of Babel with pyramid platforms with gods that demanded sacrifice, all worshipping Nimrod and Nimrod's god under different names after the languages were split. Right into a quick clip of the Tree of Life pattern, the lower Elohim, and then we're going to complete this Nimrod saga, involving patterns I mentioned, pyramids, Orion, Hyperborea, and everything you thought you ever knew about everything. These things you see are all the same, and if you want to understand the ancient world, you have to understand that genetic altering was a big part of it. The Sumerian tablets and Mesopotamian accounts are the first to show this. You see the Anunnaki genetic tree of life, along with their whole package of technology, including pine cones, wristwatches, necklaces, and the mysterious handbags. All of this will be coming back to in the future. You also see over time a lesser degree of repeating this process. It's probably how the giants came back. You see in Egypt, India, and other places around the world. Also, this basic tree of life design is also the Kabbalistic tree of life, which is probably based off of Lucifer's breastplate / ephod, which we'll be coming back to. Also, one of the pieces of tech we'll be coming back to is the Ankh, notable in Egyptian culture. They're always doing mysterious things with these in rituals, and if you really pay attention, the circuit at the top of the cross in the circle, really they're putting it to the nostrils, creating an electrical circuit, basically electrically stimulating their brain, trying to grow it or know more stuff. Another pattern you'll see in the ancient world. This electrical stimulation through the nostrils is really interesting if you consider that God breathed the breath of life, his essence, into the nostrils of Adam specifically. All of this is a repeat process, just as is the concept of the golem, which is basically mankind taking dirt and then breathing its own essence of some kind through words and creating a being. This is also the same thing that God did, and the genetic copying that you see with these Anunnaki tree of life and repeat tree of life patterns, all stuff we'll be getting more into in the future. Whether mankind, altered mankind, golems, homunculus, or even transhumanistic AI quantum cyborgs, all of these things are right in the same ballpark basically, spiritual technology. You see passed down through alchemy and secret societies, and even the concept of a cauldron or an alchemy cauldron is basically a faux Tehom. The Spirit of God hovered over the deep, which is the Tehom, and had all the essence and building blocks of life. So the alchemical cauldron is a faux Tehom, what God created with. Lots of interesting things when you have knowledge at an elemental level. Even people known to grow in radioactive environments. So before you try to become a giant, do electrical stimulation to the dome through an Ankh, or try to create your own being, just remember all this is forbidden technology and practices from the fallen angels. But it does reveal very interesting clues about our past, the history, and the nature of everything. Future plug coming back to the Anunnaki genetic CRISPR kit, and all the other symbols of the ancient world. And remember, you're the ultimate creative player that you're building. Make a good one. Fill it with the red letters is my recommendation. The words of Yeshua. See you next time. That Elohim is plural. Also, if you study into the divine council, you find that there is the Elohim amongst the Elohim, the high chief Elohim, which is the God of the Bible, the creator, most high God. The other lower Elohim, probably fallen angel / Anunnaki that came down. Also then became the divine council who ruled over the 72 nations after the Tower of Babel. This number 72 is important, and we'll come back in with the next video about emojis and the 72 demon sigil seal of Solomon emojis and how spiritual technology is being used to put the world in a matrix. These things shouldn't surprise you. Seek the truth at all costs. See you next time.